Hey, and welcome, or welcome back if you're returning. Today we're looking at the Silent Sisters. They are an order of women belonging to the Faith of the Seven, not to be confused with septors. They have the duty of attending to the dead, and they're sometimes called the Stranger's Wives, Handmaidens to the Stranger, or Death's Handmaidens. They're sworn to the service of the stranger, dress in grey hooded robes, and have taken a vow of chastity and silence. So what do we know about them? Well, we're first introduced to them in Ned's 7th chapter. During the tourney for the new hand of the king, Sir Hugh, a young knight of the Vale, Sir Hugh of the Vale, supposed to be Welsh, who is, he happens to be the former squire of John Arryn, the most recently deceased hand of the king. He is killed by the mountain, Sir Gregor Clegane. Ned says the Silent Sisters had dressed him in his best velvet tunic, with a high collar to cover the ruin the lance had made of his throat, which gives us our first inkling that the Silent Sisters are essentially the Westerosi Undertakers. It's confirmed a few paragraphs later when Ned tells them that they should take the armour with the body, which answers that first question with a little bit of mystery. Ned turned to the woman beside the cart, shrouded in grey, face hidden but for her eyes. The Silent Sisters prepared men for the grave, and it was ill fortune to look upon the face of death. Send his armour home to the Vale, the mother will want to have it. To look upon the face of death. I mean, that's a bit harsh, but I guess if these women are only showing up to tend to the dead, they're a bit like the Grim Reaper, an omen wandering about, and if you see one, there's going to be a dead body nearby. It's curious, though, why they don't want to look upon their faces. It gives them a bit of anonymity. Weird. The next time we hear them mentioned in A Game of Thrones is again from Ned, saying to one of his remaining northern guards that he is giving the bodies of Jory Cassell, Heward, and Will to the Silent Sisters so they can be returned to Winterfell. Which, considering his own storyline, is quite dark. Seeing the Grim Reaper around is a bit foreshadowing of his own demise. But later in the story, we do hear a lot of characters seeing the Silent Sisters around. We hear even more of them throughout A Song of Ice and Fire, the Tales of Duncan Egg, Fire and Blood, and even some old bits of George R.R. Martin interviews. So let's unpack those details, shall we? In an old So Spake Martin in 2015, George was asked what options female criminals had to avoid execution. They can't take the black, but was there an accepted thing they could do otherwise? George did mention there were various female orders of septors and the likes, and then he focused in particular on the Silent Sisters, which he specifically called them a mystic order, who take vows of silence and tend to the dead. So it seems girls and women are sometimes sent to become Silent Sisters as a punishment. Theon threatens Asher with it. Marriage is not for you, Theon decided. When I rule, I believe I will pack you off to the Silent Sisters. Wyman Manderley also threatened the mouthy Willa with it. Willa, every time you open your mouth, you make me want to send you to the Silent Sisters. And it's also said that the Silent Sisters are glad to welcome widows. Cersei tells Felice Stokeworth, "The Silent Sisters are always glad to welcome widows," she said. "Theirs is a serene life, a life of prayer and contemplation and good works. They bring solace to the living and peace to the dead. And they do not talk." She could not have the woman running about the Seven Kingdoms spreading dangerous tales. Which leads me on to the next point, the Silent Sisters taking vows of silence and chastity. When the Hound threatens to send Arya, he says, "If I had any sense, I'd send you to the Silent Sisters. They cut out the tongues of girls who talk too much." Podrick Payne also believes the same thing, but is told different. "The Silent Sisters never speak," said Podrick. "I heard they don't have tongues." Septon Maribald smiled. Mothers have been cowing their daughters with that tale since I was your age. There is no truth to it then, and there is none now. A vow of silence is an act of contrition, a sacrifice by which we prove our devotion to the seven above. For a mute to take a vow of silence would be akin to a legless man giving up the dance. So it seems like their tongues being cut out is a myth, and it could have started from one woman's punishment before she was sent there, being told and understood as maybe what happens to all, or just told as a story to scare the children. In Fire and Blood, we learn that Marla Sunderland rebelled against House Arryn during Aegon's conquest, but she was deposed by her younger brother Steffon with the failure of the Sisterman's rebellion. After 5 years of imprisonment, Marla's tongue was removed, and she was forced to join the Silent Sisters. Poor Marla. We also learn that novices shave their heads, take cold baths, eat meatless meals, are scrubbed with horsehair brushes, and wear rough spun robes. Disobedient novices can be caned, which is quite similar to the maesters and how they would treat their misbehaving novices. The Silent Sisters have a mother house, which is located in Old Town, adjoined to the Starry Sept, which Queen Alysanne Targaryen visited in 54 AC. The Silent Sisters can be skilled barbers, as they might need to trim beards and cut hair. The women can remove the bowels and organs and drain the body of blood, stuffing it with salts and fragrant herbs, as we hear they do to Lord Tywin after his death, but he still manages to stink. The Silent Sisters often dress the deceased in their finest attire, such as tunics or armour. To allow for easier transport or burial, the Silent Sisters can strip the flesh from the deceased's bones through boiling or beetles. Tyrion makes that sound a lot worse though when he thinks about it. He says the wolves were grey, and so were the Silent Sisters. Together they stripped the flesh from the fallen, which makes them sound scary and savage, but they're not like that. But going back from what we know to that more mystical side of things, it's odd that Catelyn, someone we know who dies, thinks that the Silent Sisters do not speak to the living, Catelyn remembered dully, but some say they can talk to the dead. I don't think there's much to this other than they spend a lot of time with the dead. And a bit like undertakers and coroners, it's who they're around, so if they've taken a vow of silence, you may as well talk to the dead guy, because they're not going to tell anyone. I do think they're not as mystical as they're made out to be, but we do have another quite humorous belief that we hear of from Creighton Longbow, as he tells Illifer and Brienne. A man would need to be a fool to rape a Silent Sister, even to lay hands upon one. It's said they are the stranger's wives, and their female parts are cold and wet as ice. Which, considering the poor Silent Sisters do get raped, and we don't hear of anybody with a ice dick corpse, they just seem to get away with it. I would say that that's not true, and is probably another tale just told to warn people away from doing that. But lastly, I'd like to finish on the thought of them being a bad omen, the Grim Reaper omen of Westeros. They show up a lot, but I would just say that that may not necessarily relate to the specific characters we see seeing them. Just that there's a hell of a lot of death in the story. What do you think? Are they an omen? Are they the Westerosi Grim Reaper? Are they simply just doing their job? Let me know. Also, why do they only do it for nobles? And why is it only the women that tend to the dead? Is it just because it's a messy job? But then the maesters do messy jobs too. I don't know. And there is a silent section of the Faith of the Seven for males. They go to the Quiet Isle. Let me know what you think. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Sorry if it sounds a bit weird today. I've got a cold, so I can't tell how loud I'm being, and my tone is all off. I'll see you next time. Cheerio.